Angels right now are really, really hard because they were sucked bone dry in 2022, and it ended in me having a seizure in front of an investor while I was pitching the company. And I really had to reevaluate whether the stress of this was worth a brain bleed. So it's not a part of the business that we do to make money. It's a part of the business we do because we believe this is the future of healthcare.
Welcome to Keep It Healthy podcast. I'm Jan Kamiński, founder of Momentum, where we're working to make healthcare more accessible, efficient, and human-centered through technology. Each episode explores healthcare AI, secure software development, digital transformation, and user-centered design, bringing you actionable insights for healthcare innovators, medical professionals, and technology leaders. Explore the cutting edge of healthcare innovation through conversations with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts who are transforming patient care through technology. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jillian Miranda, founder of Snatch Health and leading voice in digital women's health. As both an operator and advisor, Jill combines deep startup expertise with passionate commitment to health equity. In our conversation, we'll explore how technology can transform care delivery and make healthcare more accessible for all. You've shared before that you have lived experience of being a patient, and that says something about your approach to healthcare. Could you share the whole story from your personal journey that gave you this perspective on challenges that women have in healthcare and how that experience has shaped your work in digital field?
Before I share mine, I will just say I think everyone in healthcare has some semblance of some personal reason for being here. We were talking with a chief medical officer the other day. She had gone through business school. She was all set to go into banking, and her kid died. And she was like, okay, well, now I have to figure out how to be a doctor because this can't happen to someone else's kid, right? And so those touching stories, my guess is 9.9 times out of 10, if you ask people why they're in healthcare, they will have some experience. My experience is direct, right? I was the person that was sick. And it's definitely, it plays a part in every piece of who I am, including my professional life. And it does change the way in which I lead, in which I can be in a professional sphere, right? I'm still undiagnosed neuro condition, but I started having bad symptoms at like 6 years old. And I was lucky because I was young and my parents scrambled everything together to get me to the best doctors and to trip me wherever I needed to go. And so I grew up with my body not really being able to do things the way it looks like other people's do. And I fit my life around it. So now as an adult, it's not something I think about that much, right? Because I already understand how to move around my life without it, while knowing it's there and also actually living and having a happy life. For people who get chronic illness later in their lives, I couldn't even imagine going through that because you don't have that period of learning, of failing and experimenting and seeing what works and doesn't work for you. And you have a lot more to people depending on you. And 42% of women have a chronic illness. That is a grossly underestimated number. It is most likely far higher. That is half the moms out there that are now trying to figure out how to make their bodies work when you know what? They lost mobility in their right arm today. And they have to still pick their kids up, go to school, get dinner ready. So chronic illness is impacting all of us. And it is something we have to live with and get through. It definitely is a struggle, but it makes you a tough cookie, honestly. Mm-hmm. But genuinely and truly, especially for a founder, I find that experience of always being sick, never getting an answer, really, and always being in pain really made it a lot easier for me to jump into entrepreneurship because it's very similar, right? A lot of similarities between those two things. It makes you tough. It makes you tenacious. It makes you scrappy. It makes you resilient, which is probably the most important thing, I think. And all of those things and more have definitely impacted my experience in my professional work.
Why did you focus on FemTech? I mean, because you could have chosen to focus on healthcare as a whole, but you narrowed it down to on FemTech and equity-focused founders. And why did you make that choice? And how do you think focusing on that underrepresented founders gives you the edge, the competitive edge as a consulting company?
So it really doesn't give us a competitive edge as a consulting company. It kind of hurts us more often, right? Because we would be able to get a lot more clients and work with a lot more people if we were working with overrepresented founders, right? There's a lot more money there. There's a lot smaller number. So it's not a part of the business that we do to make money. It's a part of the business we do because we believe this is the future of healthcare. These are the people that are going to change it. The people that need the most are the ones that are going to change the most. Because through that lived experience of trying everything and failing and seeing something that works, those are the people that come up with something that can change the lives of everybody. And we've seen that time and time again. So as far as the consultancy goes, that's a conscious choice that Ashley and I make because of our values and our view on just being a decent human, which is apparently not the norm for everybody. So that's that. I would say choosing FemTech, have a vagina. And whether I am aware of my vagina at all times or not, the people around me are aware at all times in the world. And then also when I walk into a doctor's office, there is no question of I am not someone that has a neuro illness. I am a woman that has a neuro illness. And that changes everything. Because if I'm a woman with a neuro illness, it's going to take me 4 extra years to get diagnosed than it would a man coming in. So I don't think I had a choice to choose anything else, right? Because if I wanted to change healthcare, which I do, if I wanted to be closest to innovation, which I do, I'm looking at the people that need it most and are the most left behind. And I truly believe that that's where innovation lies. We just never tapped into it because we throw those people to the side. So I didn't want to go into, when I was first getting into, this was like healthcare, it was like before value-based care, but it was right around like telemedicine, like the one medical binge of like telemedicine, primary PCP work. I could have easily gone into that and been like, we're helping people, but I didn't want to come in to help people. I wanted to come in so that we could stop people dying that were dying all the time that didn't need to die. And when you look at someone going to when you look at maternal health, when you look at diseases like endo and chronic illness and autoimmune that disproportionately or only affect women, they're dying. It's more serious. There's more of a need. And so for me, equity is, I think, my guiding post no matter what. I go to, like, if there is someone that is treating someone else as not a human being, that's it for me, right? So I'm going who needs it most, and I'm betting that those people that need it most probably already have their own answers. They don't need me to tell them. I just need to work with them to figure out how to help them get their ideas out there.
How do you, or have you seen differences in the challenges faced by FemTech founders versus founders in a broader health tech? And especially from the VC perspective, like how do you respond to this criticism or the, critics who might, especially VCs, that might dismiss FemTech as a niche market, as they say?
So one, it's not a niche market. I've gotten to the point where when people ask me that, I say, is 50% of the world's population niche? And then they get a bit quieter, right? So the niche is a bit of a joke. I feel like we've gone beyond that. It's not worth talking about because it's not. It is an enormous market size. So that is an easy, if you're asking me that question, you obviously don't know what you're talking about to begin with. So I don't need to engage. And I would say the same thing to my founders, by the way. The difference between female founders and any other digital health founder, we know the statistics, 2% of venture funding goes to women. Less than 0.5% goes to any woman of color. Those have gotten worse, not better. The amounts of money that women technically have gotten a bit higher in the past year or two. But right now, the amount of women that actually get any venture funding is the lowest it's been since 2017. So there are all these posts about like women's health coming and like everybody, and it is an emerging market and people are excited about it and we are talking about it in a better way. But at the end of the day, we can do whatever we want. We can paint the world pink. If investors don't put money into women's hands, there's nothing that I as a founder can do. There's nothing that I as a consultant can do. It's not on us. There's nothing we can tell them that are going to make them want to fund women. That is just an eternal universal problem.
Okay, but what can founders do to increase the odds of securing the funding?
Founders can look at who they're talking to. It's not hey, let me just speak to everything and see. Founders can be really intentional with the conversations they're having. This is something that we tell our founders. You're going on a blind date. And yes, you're really, really worried about if they like you and there's that personal insecurity, but you have to remember that you need to be concerned about them as well. You can't go into that only thinking of yourself. You have to think of the other person on the blind date. Would they be a good partner for me? Would they help me? It needs to be a two-way street. And if at any point a founder feels like, you know what, I don't appreciate the way they said that, like the values don't really seem to align here, or it makes me shaky the way they talk about their portcos, say no. There will be other people out there. So I think the best way you have to avoid the founders that refuse to accept the reality of women's health. It's just not worth your time. And I think a lot of founders try and spend a lot of time educating them and pushing them, and you're pushing a huge, huge, huge rock up a hill, and it's just not really going to work. So the key there is like, do I absolutely need VC, which is another question altogether. Can I go for angels? Can I do family and friends crowdfunding, which is easier now than ever before? But if I do need VC, what VCs am I comfortable getting into bed with? What VCs do I think I can trust as board members, as people that could potentially be pushing towards where my company goes? Do they have the same strategically, are they in the same place and have a similar vision? And at the very least, and this is something I've learned hard in the past 2 years, value alignment is so huge. If you are working with a VC that is giving you money as a reproductive health, but like they're vehemently anti-abortion, right? I don't know, but like you can see, like, if there are ways in which they're like, oh yeah, we'll do this women's health company, it's a cool opportunity, and then on the other hand, they hate women. Not a good plan. Just get out. It's not worth it because it's going to hurt you more in the end. So there's no perfect answer on how to get money from VCs because we can't make them give us money. All we can do is what we've continued to do and always done, built great companies, tried to help each other when VC was not available through partnerships and through communities and deep relationships we built with each other. And we can try and wait until there are founders that get it. And I could name at least 10 to 30 investors that get it off the top of my head right now, right? Like there are ones that do. So it's just finding those.
You mentioned other people as a source of capital. So is there a specific type of investor or fund that, underrepresented founders should be targeting, or any other funding options outside of the VC that you think founders like that should explore more often?
Yeah. So as far as specific VCs, I honestly can't answer that because I don't know what the company is, right? Depending on what your company is going to be very, very different. It might be like a company that, like, this is the classic thing, like a VC has started up a few women's health companies out of like a VC incubator. And after a year or so, they're like, oh, not good enough margins, and they sell off to PE. Those are people that invested heavily in women's health companies, right? But the way they treated them once they were in the portfolio was awful, and the founders ended up getting really screwed afterwards. So it's a question of like, is it worth it to have the money this second and deal with whatever's going to befall me negatively later and hope it doesn't happen? Or should I just not take that chance? It's a risk, like it's a question of risk, and every founder handles risk in a different way. But I couldn't name one without knowing what the founder's ultimate goal is for the company or what the company actually does. What was the second question?
Other sources of funding outside of VCs.
So obviously we always talk about angels. Angels right now are really, really hard because they were sucked bone dry in 2022. The IPO market's been awful. You know what? the market in general has been awful. It's been a rough 2 years for tech, particularly for digital health, because we were flying on a sky high, and then the bubble popped, which we knew it would, but we had no way of knowing how bad the bubble pop would be. And I think it was worse than a lot of us were expecting, right? So market's terrible. If companies can't get out, LPs aren't getting value. That means LPs don't have money. LPs are angels usually, right? That's kind of the same thing. They can angel check and write for themselves, but they also give their money to VCs as LPs. And that's what most of them do. Very few angels just write checks to people, right? Like they need something else, like something a bit more stable in their like investing portfolio, right? So VCs can't raise right now because they can't get LPs, because the LPs didn't get any return from the VCs or from their angel investment, which means if the LPs don't have returns, they can't write angel checks, right?
Yeah.
So it's a trickle down issue. It's made angels really hard. However, when Ashley and I meet with a founder and they're like, I need to fundraise, we always say, if there is any way, shape, or form that you can do it without venture, do it that way. You build your company as much as humanly possible, and you don't take venture in until it's an absolute need, until you can't get any farther or you can't grow to the next point without that influx of capital. So we always say, look to angels, which I think everybody says. There is a lot of grant funding. It's hard to find. I've known founders that have 1099 some grad students to help them find grants and see the process through and write them. My partner and I were yesterday just on a call with one of the directors of the SBRs out of the NIH, and he was talking about the omnibus bill, and there are ways to get grant money and through federal grants and more local grants. Hello Alice also does a great job of finding those for you and pointing them towards founders. The other thing I will say is, when you were raising during COVID, crowd raising was still a little right? There was still a lot of problems with it. There were tax implications, your cap table, it just made things messy. It hadn't been a perfected process. It's not perfect. It has gotten much better. And it could be, and I know even a VC firm right now that's using crowd raising. And there's something to be said about building a grass movement and getting $100, $200 checks here and there, and eventually it all adds up. So I think there are options. It's just that you're not going to get to the 1.5 very easily through angels. That would have to be a lot of angels. And right now, that's not at this stage in where we are as a market. It's hard. It's always been hard, the hardest it's ever been. But there are ways other than venture to answer your question.
Regarding the pitching to those entities or VCs, you shared that FemTech founders have often, and you mentioned that at the beginning, that they spend their time pitching or rather educating investors before they can actually talk about the product. So how can they simplify their pitch, or how can they get investors to get it faster?
It is 100% true that is a reality. We were talking, I know of a cervical cancer med device that is working towards that, and she was talking to me over drinks and was like, it's miserable. The first 30 minutes to spend, literally, I don't get to pitch. I just talk to them about how this is a problem, and their minds are blown because they've never even occurred. This has never occurred to them. And it's a problem everywhere for sure. You need to bring your pitch deck. You need to make sure it's as short as possible. It has as least words on it as possible. It is extremely direct. This is the problem. This is my solution. What I'm doing to fix it. And you need no more than 10 slides ever. You should never need more than 10 or 11 slides. That's another giant mistake founders make. They make very long pitch decks. But as far as the question of how to get away from the education, it's not our job as founders to educate ignorant people. So if the investor themselves says, oh, hey, I have a cervical health company coming across my desk today, we have Google. They can Google, or they can ask their analysis, or they can try and get at least like a 2-sentence, say, this is what they do, these are the problems. The impetus should never be on the founder to have to explain such deep a problem in great detail. And sometimes when founders do describe in detail, it loses them. So I would say when you need to over-explain, cut back on the detail, make it very, this is a problem, this is why, don't and just leave it very simple. A lot of founders, because they know that the person they're talking to did not Google, which seems like a very low threshold thing, but they don't have time, right? They then are like, oh shit, well now I have to tell him everything. And founders don't need to do that. And they also don't need to feel that pressure. And it's also not on them. It is on the other person in the room. Man, women, don't care. It is on the other person in the room to listen and to be prepared for the call. So that's all I'll say there.
And regarding the pressure, I mean, I like the fact that you brought it up, and the founder's mind in a sense, or approach. I wanted to also ask you about leadership, because in one of the interviews when I was preparing, researching for the podcast, you mentioned that being a founder obviously takes a serious toll on your physical and mental health. And for founders who feel like they're on the brink of a burnout, let's say, what advice do you give them? Or have you ever experienced burnout yourself?
Again, chronically ill. That does, stress very much affects that, as it does for everybody. When I was in fundraising for a startup that I thank God got out of as soon as possible, but there was a time that I was having a seizure a month, and it ended in me having a seizure in front of an investor while I was pitching the company.
Really?
Yes. And a pretty bad concussion, like a few days in the hospital, came back. Like it was a whole thing. And I really had to reevaluate whether the stress of this was worth a brain bleed. And it sounds ridiculous and it makes me chuckle, honestly. But like that is the most founder thing in the world. All founders are burnt out all of the time. That's what the job is. The job is to be burnt out and to still somehow keep going. And if you ask any founder, I promise you, like I would bet my left leg that every founder would say, of course I've experienced burnout. My life is one big burnout. Like my job is to be burnt out. Because when you are a founder, when you are an entrepreneur, your life, your body stops kind of being your own. It's your businesses. You are responsible to people. You are on the hook. You are there to make things happen. And it kind of gives you this weird disassociation from your own humanity, right? Like my business kind of owns me. I don't own my business. And that does not leave room for self-care. That does not leave much room. Like finding my co-founder was supposed to grab her medications from CVS. It took her 5 days to actually get them because every single day we were working past 8 p.m. this week. So she literally to the last day was like, I can't, I need to go get my meds. And the point being that, and we don't have kids. I can't even imagine being an entrepreneur with children. So, I mean, what do you do for it? Whatever you can. Don't be a founder. Figure out if this is actually what you want with your life. If there's any way you can do anything. This is another thing that we tell founders. If there is any way you can do anything else with your life, do that. And then if it's burning in you to be a founder and keeping you up at night that you have this idea, that's when you know it's worth to go off of, because you need to be you need it to be burning a hole in your heart, and that amount of commitment is what's going to get you to push through the burnout.
Should founders talk about mental health with their teams, in your opinion?
So I think it's unbelievably irresponsible not to, no matter what, anywhere. Having discussions, like not having discussions about mental health just makes everything worse for everybody. And it's stupid and archaic. So yeah, there should always be questions about mental health. I also think as a leader, there is power in saying, hey, you know what? If you feel depressed today, that's cool. I'm depressed too. Like, it is what it is. We're humans. It's not shame. We're all dealing with one thing or another. Take the day. It's honestly just showing humanity to others, because we're all mentally ill, right? You can't exist in this world at this point and not be mentally ill, it feels. So you do have a responsibility. Founders often don't have teams until much later, right? But you do have a responsibility to do. They're mimicking what you do. They're looking at what you do, and what you do impacts them and impacts their actions. So it is your responsibility to show clear boundaries. I, 2 jobs ago, had about 6 direct reports, and I had one direct report that her mother was ill. She was going through a lot, and she kept showing up. And I literally said, you need to go. I'm like, you're off the project. You need to go. Yeah. You're going to kill yourself, and you might not see it now, but you're going to literally, it's going to get you to a place where you can't continue going. This isn't sustainable. I hope you forgive me for this, but you're done for 2 weeks. You need to take a breath. And I think it's on that for CEOs. Again, CEOs don't know everybody in their company, but for any leader to really be aware that people are watching you and seeing what you do, you need to be a good influence of that. You need to show self-care and boundary setting, particularly for women. That is a super tough one. But so much of protecting yourself from burnout is actually just creating healthy boundaries with people in your life.
Yeah, and with I mean, for the founders, or on this, let's say, edge, or especially listen right now, who are on the fence about whether their idea is good enough to pursue, they're struggling with funding, what would you tell them?
The market is saturated almost everywhere, right? That is kind of a good thing. Women's health is getting attention. People are building in it. But there's not one area in women's health where there aren't at least 3 products that say they're doing the same thing. And investors know that, and they get annoyed, right? So while I get that it might feel exciting to be an entrepreneur, my advice is always, if you love this question enough and there's someone building it, use what you have to help them. Connect to the people that have already been building what you want to see, support them, and come alongside them as best you can. That's the best way to do it. If nobody in the space is doing what you're doing, you're completely alone, and you really think that it's needed, go for it. But go for it recognizing the realities of what it's going to do to you as a human, your life, your loved ones, and everything else. It also is a magical experience in so many ways. When you see something that you built with your bare hand make. We were working with one of our clients last night, and the CEO was going through just a Google form of some of it's clinical, so some of his clinical workers. He just asked them a few questions, and they were writing him this huge story about how this job saved my life. And I was a single mom with 3 kids working in an apartment, and now we rent a house. Just you see yourself having impact, and you see your product actually doing what it's supposed to do, and people that are so grateful it's there. Those are the beautiful things about being founders, right? Those are the moments that it's that's why I'm here. That's why I'm killing myself to do this. So there are plenty of those moments. I think it's just, it has become very easy to just say I'm a founder nowadays. And I don't necessarily think that that's the best thing for everyone.
Okay. So and if you are a founder that is either raising funds or is on this edge that we discussed, if people want to connect with you and learn more about Snatch Health, where should they go?
Snatch Health is a market research and a boutique market research and strategy consulting firm. 2 arms of the business. We work on the enterprise side, primarily with biotech, medtech, diagnostic companies, mapping out women's health strategy. And then the special side, which is my favorite side, and what we're talking about is the work that we do one-on-one with founders. So we work from early stage, even ideation, to about Series A, B. And we would love to meet. We would love to meet you. So we can be reached at Jill at snatchhealth.com or Ashley at snatchhealth.com. You can DM us on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive there, or shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. I mean, Jill, thank you for your time today and the inspiring speech you gave, and hope to see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sharon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us and keep it healthy. Visit Momentum's website to download our latest report on the evolution of telemedicine. You'll find the link below. Subscribe for more healthcare innovation insights and join us next time as we continue exploring the intersection of technology and healthcare. This is Jan Kamiński signing off.